welcome to the One Big Calling. I found an old video of me. I think I must have been about 22, 23, and I'm actually going to share this little bit of video. However, having said that, I haven't got a clue what I want to do. Obviously the ideal job would be something where I was answering the telephone, sorting out messes, and flying off all around the world to sort out other people's problems. You know, that I wanted to do something amazing in the world and change the world. But at the age of 22, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. But also as well, I didn't really have the self-esteem or, you know, the kahunas to actually do anything about it. And I actually said to the video, I said, I just want to travel the world, help people. And you know what? That's actually kind of pretty much what I'm already doing. Now, what about you? Because we are at a time of amazing change. Now, I don't want to suddenly start like sounding like Angelina Jolie talking to the UN or anything, but we are at a time of amazing change. I don't think that there has ever been a time more poignant for a huge shift in consciousness and the way that we think about things. Because let's face it, we're going to really shift consciousness and change the world, or we're pretty much scuppered. I don't think the entire planet is scuppered. I think that we're kind of scuppered. So, do you have a calling to answer to where we are in the world at the moment? Are you feeling like a sense of wanting to follow some kind of heart-centered thing in your life? Now, I'm making the assumption that you're not already doing it, and maybe you are already doing it. And maybe you're already doing it, but you don't even know that you're already doing it. Because this is another thing that happens, is by understanding what makes us tick, by really getting a complete grip over who we are, quite often you can discover that you're already on a trajectory of changing the world and you didn't even know it. So at one point in my life, I decided I'd had enough of everything and decided to go and get a job scooping ice cream at Häagen-Dazs. Now, apart from the fact that the only thing I loved in the world was ice cream, I just hated everything. I was having an existential crisis and my life was all just meh. And I was a bit meh as well. You know, you get like that sometimes. You know, the idea we're on a planet, it's going around the sun, which is on fire, held down by gravity, which is not proven by science. And I think there may be an elastic band involved. And we think, what the heck is this all for? What am I for? What's the point in all of this? Well, I hit one of those crises and I went and got a job at Häagen-Dazs and was scooping ice cream. Now, you can't fall off your path if you try, because through doing that job, I actually met the most incredible people that actually have been key players in the life I went on to lead. Now, I'm just making a big assumption that you all know who I am, and that's a bit rude. So perhaps some of you have never come across my work. I'm a Hay House author, write lots of books. So let me just show you that there. So there can be sometimes a time delay on webinars, so do forgive me. But the slide I've just put up is a little bit about me, although I have to say in that photo, I don't half look like my grandmother. Anyway, so that's coming up. So I'm a Hay House author of the book you do know. I've got another 4 or 5 published books. I've got 6 ebooks that I've done. I've created a number of online courses. I'm a radio presenter, ex-radio presenter for LBC, current radio presenter for the BBC. And I've also presented on Hay House Radio, which has a massive amount of listeners for an internet station. I'm a blogger for Huffington Post and Psychologies magazine, and I also make films, and I'm a TV producer too. And I'm a recovering West End stage manager. Now, the reason I say recovering West End stage manager is because you can take the girl out of the theatre, but quite often you can't take the theatre out of the girl. Still like a good amount of drama. And within that, my desire to want to do something significant in the world, and maybe you can equal this yourself, comes from this amazing, like, cognitive ecstasy. Have you ever been reading a book? And it doesn't even have to be a self-help book, it could be any kind of book. And I call it the glasses off moment, where you suddenly stop reading and you take your glasses off, or whatever it is that you do if you don't wear glasses, and you just go, oh, that's brilliant, that is. There's just a moment where something connects with you on a real heart level. And you may never meet that author, you may never make that connection, but something really connects, where you just go, boom. There's a really incredible, like, I don't know, consciousness orgasm, just to be a little bit weird. But it's like it's just a beautiful moment. And it can happen through film, it can happen in theatre, it can happen in all over the place, or just in any form of art, actually. You can get that cognitive connection. And so we tend to think about changing the world through creativity, about through a cognitive art form, something like a book, or something like, I'm going to start a blog, or I'm going to start this, or I'm going to start that. But actually, there's many different ways in which we can feel that shift, that something is happening, that we are of purpose and we are doing something meaningful that matters when we get over our own stuff. So in this webinar, we're going to be talking about pretty much 3 stages of how we can get in touch with what it is that we want to do in the world and how we want to change the world. But actually, it really comes down to how we want to understand ourselves and hear really clearly what it is that we really want to be doing. So when you understand who you are, you can see clearly what it is and how you want to change the world. So it's in 3 different things. The first thing is get really clear on you, then get clear of all of the stuff that stops you. So by understanding the things that get in your way, the resistance that we have to greatness. Oh, and my dog's going to bark at talking about resistance to greatness. But it's good. She's all right. She's okay. Oh, dear. Flashbacks. And then the next level is, how do you want to turn that into something that will actually be sustainable for you? Because it's really easy to sort of say, yes, I nobly want to change the world. But actually, you do have to support yourself. So whether or not the idea that you're coming up with is actually a business, or whether or not it's something that you want to do voluntarily, whether or not it's something that just makes you just feel alive and engaged with the world. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can say, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is why I want to do it, and this is how I want to show up. So those things can be really powerful as well. So is it a business, or is it just something that you want to do? Is it some kind of non-profit thing? How do you want to spend your time? Because a lot of things it's not so much about what makes you happy, but it's about what makes you really feel alive. Like, what makes you feel that you're of purpose? What makes you feel that you're doing something really, really important? And those things are really, that's all stuff that's really, really relevant too. So just to recap, what we're going to be covering on this webinar, we're going to be looking at you, and I'm going to be asking you some poignant questions. So now is a really good moment to go and grab a paper and pen if you haven't got one in front of you already, because by asking you these questions, you're going to get a deeper insight into yourself, into who you are, into things that you want, and whether or not you've been living on purpose with your mission already, and what that mission looks like and how to expand it. Then the next thing we're going to be talking about is about your resistance, the stuff that comes up where you think, like, it's one of my favorite things, which is that heart-centered thing where you just go, I want to do something significant in the world. I want to change the world. And then your ego tells you that that's your ego talking. But actually, you think, oh, that's my ego. I'm being so egotistical. Who the hell am I to think I've got anything important or relevant or fascinating to say? But actually, that's your ego talking you out of it, which is quite interesting. The ego is not suicidal, by the way. When you start living a heart-centered life and following your intuition, the ego is going to go panic because you actually start to dissolve the ego when you start doing that. So the ego isn't suicidal. The ego always says, seek something outside of yourself, but basically try really hard not to find it. So we're going to be getting over any egotistical resistance into your greatness. And then the last one is this a business or isn't this a business? And that's a little bit harder to really talk about, but is it a business or isn't it a business? So I'm going to leave time at the end to answer your questions. I've written a little bit of a note about how this works on Google Hangouts if you've never experienced it before. So you can type your questions as we go, as you think about them, in the text box, and I would do my very, very best to answer them as soon as I can, bearing in mind that it might be responding to something I said about 5 minutes ago, but I'm aware of that. But also, if you want to speak to me directly, you can say, yeah, I want to speak, so I say by the time I'm coming to the end of the webinar, you'll be able to ask some questions. You'll get a choice as to whether or not you want to ask these questions just with audio or with video as well. As you can see by the fact that I'm using slides, I personally opted out of the video. I didn't know if I could keep my head up that long. The double chin look when you're looking down into a camera, not pretty. Looks like a bulldog, one of those bulldogs wearing a polo neck jumper, lots of chins. Not a good look. So I've opted out of the video, but please feel free to use the video if you'd like to use the video. Otherwise, you get the opportunity to just use your microphone. And you will be asked, terms and conditions. There'll be a tick box. So there'll be a little bit of time delay between getting you connected and speaking to me, which I will fill in my best radio presenting manner. Okay, so let's just crack on. So, what's the big calling? What is your mission? Now, I love this quote by Marianne Williamson. And she's a pretty smart cookie as well. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are more powerful, beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Now, I think that that's really true. But we are at a time, humanity is at a time, where we actually really need to step into our light. We need to step into our greatness. We need to start to see things. And I think it was Albert Einstein that actually said, we need a shift of consciousness, because the consciousness that we have been working through before really hasn't done an awful lot to change the entire planet. Now, I'm not sort of saying that this webinar is just about changing the entire planet, but it's also about changing your life. It's also about stepping into your greatness too, because you can't do one without the other. It's a little bit like being in love with someone when you don't love yourself. When you're in love with someone else and you don't love yourself, there's always going to be a gap. There's always going to be something that doesn't quite fit, because you're always going to be worried that that person's going to leave you, that they're going to see you for you, the scum that you really are, or whatever it is. And, it's not such a good feeling, is it? It's not such a good feeling. But when you want to change the world and you're coming from a pure place, you're not coming from a judgmental place. You're not coming from a place of there's something wrong with the world and I'm perfect and I need to change the world because I know better than everybody else. That's not what we're saying. We're looking about the observer that is taking place inside of you, the person who is witnessing what is actually going on in the world. So I remember somebody saying to me once, Becky, you're really judgmental. And I was hurt. I thought, I don't want to be judgmental. Judgmental people are horrible people. So I didn't want to be judgmental. But then it begged the question, and I asked, I said, but am I ever wrong? And she went, oh no, you're always spot on about people. And so I suddenly thought, when is a judgment and when is it an observation? And so when we look at the world and we think, okay, this needs to change, are we judging it negatively or are we simply observing it? Which brings us to the first question on how to know what it is that you need to be doing to serve the world. Now, this might sound like a really kind of like negative question, and this is something that I really want you to have a think about. What bugs you about human beings? What gets your goat? What gets on your nerves? What makes you think, idiot, asshole, whatever it is that you think? What don't you like about other humans? Now, this isn't a case of you being judgmental, like I've said. This is a case of perhaps you observing something about humans. So I want you to write down, what is it that gets you goat about other human beings? What is it that you find distasteful? So the reason why I want you to have a little think about that is because if you imagine that every human action is secretly a call for love. Now, bearing in mind, I know that the world has got some sociopaths and psychopaths within it, and perhaps some people who are so embedded in the ego mind that it's very difficult for them to actually see anything, beyond. But let's just sort of say that everybody is a bit balanced. Okay, so Roberta, thank you. You've said rudeness. Excellent. So rudeness. So if rudeness was a call for love, in what way is rudeness a call for love? So I imagine that when people are rude, and I certainly know that on the odd occasion when I have caught myself and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm being rude. There's two things that make me rude. If I feel I'm not being listened to, I'm not being heard, I'm not being understood. But also when we expand that, it's people feel that when they are not being seen and they are not being listened to, when they are being ignored, people get a little bit rude. They get kind of like, look at me, I'm here, and you must pay me attention. So if rudeness was a call for love, then what we're basically saying is, I'm not seen. I don't exist in the world. I'm not seen. I am lacking in being considered. So what we're really saying is, it's a cry from a place of low self-esteem. It's a cry from a place where we go, nobody sees me, I have low self-esteem, da, da, da. So Roberta, I would actually like to ask you this, if you can reply in the text box. How many times in your life have you actually found yourself helping people who have low self-esteem? And I'm not going to ask you to answer this necessarily because it's a little personal, but was this actually something that perhaps you suffered from in the past yourself? So a lack of being seen, a lack of being noticed. How do you find yourself, Roberta, actually helping people with stuff and bigging them up? Like, for example, when you go and buy a cappuccino, do you say to the person behind the counter, I love your hair. Oh, that's a nice shirt. Oh, I love your earrings. You know, like what is it that you do? So brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Roberta. So she's just replied back. And my biggest drive is I see you. So, you know, top marks, Roberta, you know, 10 out of 10. you okay, you can go now because you've scored. It's great. So basically, you are already on track with your purpose, because the thing that actually gets you about the world is actually something that you're responding to with your love. So whatever annoys us about the world is also a call for love. So Stuart, people who don't listen, fabulous. You know, people who don't listen, it's like, you know, again, it's kind of like this fog of, usually when people don't listen, they're trying to think of what it is that they need to say to you in reply to sound cool or interesting, or, you know, so they kind of like go, okay, well, what is it that I can say next? So again, it's a level of insecurity. You know, now it may be that you're not suffering from insecurity. It might not be something like that you have insecurity, and which is why you get annoyed with people that don't listen. It could just be that these people just feel that they are outside of society, so they feel that they need to somehow jump in by not listening. So you can see as you're going through this, like Olga's impatience, you know, Roberta, you know me so well. I certainly do. You know, and lack of self-awareness. Oh, one of the things that drives me mad is how spatial awareness. I can't understand how people can't see when they say, for example, in London, walk through the ticket barrier and stop. But do you know how many times I've done that in foreign countries? Do you know how many times I've been so concerned of not getting it wrong, not getting on the wrong train, not, you know, being in a place that I didn't understand. And so we don't want to walk forward until we know. So take a think about these things that are kind of coming up for you. I mean, you may have a long list of grievances against humanity, but if you look at everything as being a call for love, then that's quite a powerful way to look at it. So I had a chat, I'm going to name drop now, but I had a chat with Robert Holden the other day, because I read his book, Life Loves You, that he had written with Louise Hay. And one of the things that had been bugging me about Life Loves You was the concept of how on earth can life love you when you think of all of these pretty awful things that humanity does to the environment, does to animals, does to each other. You know, I mean, there is a level of insanity in human beings. There is just this crazy level of insanity. But actually, that is one part of your brain. Because when you step out, there is another part of you that is the observer. Now, you might have experienced the observer before, and I'll give you a really good example of this. Those of you who drink alcohol, okay. When you're drunk, you're aware that you're drunk, right? I mean, kind of like bouncing off the walls. Oh my goodness, I've really drunk too much drunk. So when you're drunk, you're aware that you're drunk. Is the awareness drunk? So if the awareness was drunk, it would be drunk, right? So is your awareness drunk when you're drunk? No, I don't think it is. Now, in addition to that, when you're angry, and you know in those arguments, there is a moment when you know that you could win the argument, when you could really kill it and you could absolutely say this one thing. And then there's like this knowing that comes into your head, this awareness that goes, if I say this one thing, that's the end of our relationship, or I will absolutely marmalize this person. So the awareness stops you saying it. No matter how angry you are, the awareness stops you saying it. And it's not an awareness in words. It's not a, I wouldn't do that if I were you. It's just a knowing. It's something that seems to come from outside of ourselves. And in a sense, it must come from outside of ourselves. Otherwise, it would be very drunk when we're drunk. It can't be in the physical body. Otherwise, it would be drunk when we're drunk and it would be making no sense at all, like I usually am if I'm drunk. Oh, I think I'm making sense, but I'm possibly not. So in a way, when you step back and you kind of like think, okay, so I can be aware of all of these different things. The awareness is not part of the ego. So when we look at life loving us, and this is the thing that Robert confirmed for me, is that life is indifferent about the ego. And when we're talking about life, you could talk about the universe, you could talk about, the grand creator, you can call it whatever you like, but it's that force, it's the spark that you see in somebody's eyes. It's when you can see when somebody is engaged and they are awake and they are alive. And they're not just living on autopilot. It's when they are feeling that they are engaged with something that is amazing. And when they can, you can see it. You can see that life force. You can see the curiosity. You can see the people that still look up at the tops of buildings and not moan about the council and the cracks on the pavement. You can see the people that spend time in nature and have the clarity of mind from looking at an open vista from a mountaintop out over the ocean or across a field. Engaged with life. And you can feel that comes from the awareness. It doesn't come from the ego, because the ego is always talking about lack and this isn't working and that isn't working. So when we're looking at, does life love us? Maybe not the insanity of what it is to be human, but maybe that creative spark, that thing in itself. So when we're looking at what is it and how do you want to serve the world, we're not looking at sort of like that egoic sort of, in a sense, narrow-minded kind of, I want to serve the world and I'm going to do it in this compartmentalized way. We're getting in touch with our heart and we're saying, what does my heart say to this? Because the heart brain, and there is a brain in your heart, it's got a vagus nerve and everything is quite rather intelligent, but the brain in your heart is literally soaring you forward from this consciousness that is not the egoic mind. And that says, yes, I can change the world. Yes, I can do something brilliant. Yes, I can, do something to talk from one heart or to communicate from one heart to another heart and say, I see you, I get you. And this, and to help people become more aware of that closed-minded, narrow-minded thing that is actually destroying the entire planet. And I do think that not really destroying the planet, just destroying humans, but I do think that there is a shift of consciousness that we can all be a part of. And when you can hear that, I want to do something to change the world, we actually have to go into the ego to find out what it is that we don't like about human beings, so we can see what it is that our heart is saying in reaction to that. So the heart speaks a reaction to that. And from that place, we start to be able to come up with some really, really good ideas about what it is that we really, really want to do. So I think that that's important. Yeah. And I think, Sylvia, you're right, intolerance, and we can look at all of the things that are wrong with humans, but at the end of the day, it is all about that level of kind of like chimp brain insanity, craziness, but there is another awareness that can see through that when you're engaged with that is your genius. And your inner genius has the capacity to just be in the right place at the right time with the right piece of information to be able to change things. So that's really, I think, really, really important. So I have this belief that before you were born, because I believe in life before birth, before you were born, you perhaps were laying back on a chaise longue. And a little imp came over and said, what is it that you want to get out of this lifetime? So it's not just only to be in service, but it's also, what did you come here to learn? So something that you can do like through like a meditation, in a sense, is to start to get in touch with what is it that you wanted to learn. Now, for many people born at this time, I believe that you're like a sponge. You learn stuff, and you learn and you go, okay, I'm going to do this workshop, I'm doing this course, I'm engaged in this thing. And you're like a sponge. You become like fuller and fuller and fuller, like a sponge being soaked in water and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And you become this really, really full sponge. And from that place of full sponge, you suddenly then come to a point, and maybe this is why you're on this webinar. You come to a point of fullness and go, right, well, I'm a full sponge. Where do I want to wring out my water? What am I born to do? In what way do I want to create fertile soil for something in the world? But quite often the ego will then say, you're not ready. You're not ready to do this. There's something, you're not ready. You can't do this. Well, who do you think you are? But actually, who do you think you are not to? So when we get to that idea, we sort of start to think, what is it that I was born to do? How do these things kind of like come up? And so I want you to have a little think about things that make you like yourself. So what are you doing when you like yourself the most? Like, what makes you feel really alive? Now, this isn't what makes you happy, because quite frankly, cake, it can make me happy. Going to the gym, can't stand it. But actually, going to the gym makes me fundamentally like myself, because when I come out of the gym, I feel like I've done something important. And in actual fact, I really like myself when I'm helping people. So what is it that makes you fundamentally like yourself? That's a good question to ask, because again, what makes you happy? Eventually, you kind of like get bored of it. So when you start looking at the things that make you like yourself, then that becomes quite a powerful question, because you start really looking at the things that make you feel alive. Because it can't just be a complete service where you don't gain anything from that service. It's got to be something that makes you feel alive. So Elizabeth, being friendly and helpful. That's great. Being friendly and helpful. So again, that's kind of being in service. The other thing I would ask you to do is, brilliant. Sorry, Helen, you distracted me. Being with friends and cooking for friends. Absolutely. So that's all about nurturing, isn't it? So within that, have a think about 6 things that you can't stop doing. So it might be checking your phone for messages. In my case, playing with the dog, checking my phone for messages. It's so pathetic, really. I like nurturing people as well. And Sylvie, I'm the same as you. I like listening, and I do like doing that. I like myself when I'm out in nature. I like myself when I've been going to yoga classes. So all of these things, like when you think about the 6 things that you can't stop doing, I can't stop doing yoga. I've really managed to make that a habit. I can't stop playing with my dog. I have 1 expensive cup of coffee a day. I love going out and getting a coffee. Checking my phone. So a lot of these things are around kind of like communication and nurture and playfulness. And when you have those 6 things that you can't, that you do, you can start to actually see how these patterns start to form between the things that make you like yourself, the things that you don't like about other people, and how that kind of like comes in, and also about how you feel about yourself in that way. Hopefully this is kind of like making a little bit of sense. So for the time that we've got, I've got to move on and talk a little bit about resistance, because I think that that's a really important factor too. So what are the things that get in our way and break through those resistance? Well, the first thing is going to be that little voice in your head that says, who the hell do you think you are? That's a really horrible voice in your head. So we have subpersonalities, and these subpersonalities are ego voices in our mind, and they can be pretty cruel at times, and they can make us feel really rubbish about ourselves. And we think as well, in resistance to greatness, should you risk everything to follow your heart? Should you actually just let go of everything that you're doing and follow your heart? Now, I hear this a lot where people kind of say, it'd be brilliant. I'm just going to leap. I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to manifest something amazing by quitting my job and throwing myself into the universe. And I think you're nuts. Now, that might go against every single spiritual discipline that you've ever heard. Leap of faith. Yeah, great. But make sure that you do it like with a very nicely long bungee cord. So when people take leaps of faith, and you hear this quite a lot where people sort of say, I did this really, I just threw in my career and I got a job and everything out, and it all worked out really brilliantly. I think hindsight's absolutely amazing. But when you do actually throw caution to the wind and go and do something really crazy. I think that you can do that when you're in your early 20s, when you can rebuild your life at any time if it absolutely goes horribly wrong. But actually, you need to be a little bit more wise than just to let things go. And I do understand the law of attraction and manifestation. I get all of that. But I actually think that when it comes to kind of like, do I just risk it all? Risk it all with clarity. Risk it all with clarity. Don't risk it all with reckless abandon. So it's a little bit like Tarzan when you're in one job and you want to kind of like throw yourself into another job. And you kind of like, you literally need to be kind of like going at a certain momentum and a certain altitude, like Tarzan on a vine, before you can let go of one vine and grab hold of the other vine. The idea of kind of like dropping off the current vine that you're on financially, emotionally, and all of that stuff, only to slither yourself like some kind of like, unfit pole dancer up one of these vines, and there's an image, up a vine to say, oh yeah, well, a lot of people who say this worked out, you want to make it work out, but what the driving force is when you've actually dropped yourself like that, what the driving force is fear. You throw yourself and you suddenly go, oh my goodness, what have I done? Everyone's going to judge me unless I make this work. I've got to make this work. So people then start making it work at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then they can turn around and say that it worked. But in actual fact, it's not just because, oh, something brilliant happened. So be a little sensible about it. You can build one regime or career or all the rest of it whilst the other one, like you can be studying something, and it's incredible how many free courses there are out there and things that you can study. You can be building something or your mindset around it, or even doing free work experience. We tend to shy away from that when we kind of like get into our 30s and 40s, like, oh no, I can't do work experience, because that's what you do when you're in your early 20s. But how are you going to know that you love someone unless you can love something, unless you can find a mentor, somebody who's already doing it before you, somebody that you can learn from? So when we're breaking through resistance, make sure that any of the fears that come up in your head that say you can't do this, you can answer those fears. Because it's very easy to go, oh, this is just my resistance, this is just my fear talking. But actually, it's not just your fear talking. There can be your fear telling you something very sensible. So for example, procrastination. Everyone says, oh, I'm procrastinating, I'm not doing what it is that I should be doing. But, really, is your procrastination actually just holding you back because you're missing a vital piece of information? And I said this the other day over lunch with a couple of friends, and I just had to say, sometimes procrastination is the guide of your intuition to tell you you really aren't ready. And often the reason why we're not ready is not because we're not ready, it's because we're missing a vital piece of information. And the lady I was talking to reflected back to me. She said, oh my goodness, I'm so pleased that you just said that. She said, because I've been really procrastinating about applying for this particular job. And then I got this phone call from someone who works for the company that told me a little bit more about the job, which meant that the pitch that I wrote for the job was absolutely spot on, whereas the original pitch that I was going to write for the job was off. So sometimes your procrastination is to hold you back, to say you haven't got all of the pieces in place. So rather than kind of going, oh, there's something wrong with me, I'm having a reaction to fear because I don't feel like I'm good enough, or I don't feel I'm this or that, we can start finding ourselves going on a self-development journey that becomes the ego's real procrastination tool. Actually, the more you are trying to fix yourself, the more you are saying, when I've got over my fears, when I've got over my resistance, when I'm ready in this world, the more you're doing that, actually, the harder it is and the worse it is. Because the more you're trying to fix yourself, the less you're actually making a difference in the world, and the less you're making the changes. And I do believe, having looked at the things that, annoy you in other people, and the fact that we've answered that by actually looking, well, what does love say to this? What is love saying to this? If you're trying to fix yourself, the fastest way to fix whatever you perceive to be wrong with you, I'm not smart enough, I'm not clever enough, I haven't got enough courses under my belt, I haven't, whatever it is that you believe that you are, I've got to fix this and then I can do my calling. I've got to look at this and then I can go and do something else. It's just your ego telling you to avoid doing what is your heart-centered calling, because the greatest healing comes from serving others. The greatest healing comes from being in community. And I know this from my own life, that I was at a seminar and I heard a speaker basically said, I have never felt fully prepared for any great undertaking I have ever taken in life. I have never felt fully prepared for any great undertaking I have ever taken in life. Whoa. And this is the thing, we don't feel fully prepared for any great undertaking. We don't feel fully prepared, but you have to do it anyway. Because to feel prepared, you then go into a real procrastination of trying to fix yourself until you're ready. This doesn't mean that there aren't things that have to go into place. Like, for example, one of the biggest fears is, if you have a family, if you have responsibilities, can you just quit the job that is paying the mortgage and go and do something heart-centered? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe you've got to wait until your kids have left school, but maybe you could set up some support group, start doing something in a small way to make it happen. But the idea that you can jump and leap and the universe will just support you, I think if you're on your own and you're single, then you have the opportunity to be able to take more risks. But if there are people who rely upon you and depend on you, then not so much. Yet, having said all of that, by understanding what really makes you tick and what makes you great in the world, you might actually find that the life that you're living right now is perfect for your purpose. It might need a little bit of tweaking. You might be able to look at it a little bit differently. But sometimes when you shift perceptions over something that you're already doing, it creates a new vibrance and a new life to it. It doesn't always have to be anything else. It can create a really new vibrant, a really new kind of connection to it. It's all about what you make things mean, not really exactly the way that things are. So when you're looking at breaking through your resistance to anything that you've got to do, the thing is get in touch with your real desire to do it, and allow your desire for something to be stronger than your fear of it. So, we've heard stories about women who can lift cars, with children, a child trapped underneath it, and suddenly have this incredible strength to be able to lift an entire car off a trapped child. Okay, that's a physical thing, and that's something that you can suddenly find all of the energy for. But actually, it's very true. The more you feel righteous anger to something, righteous anger, righteous disgust, righteous fury about the state of our oceans, or about people not listening, or whatever it is, whatever that is, you can get to a point where you can actually say, okay, the power that I have that drives my passion allays my fear of what will people think of me. Can I do this? Do I have the skills? All of that stuff. But don't allay the fear of your own security and safety, because sometimes you need to listen to your fear and ask and become curious about what it is that it's actually trying to tell you. Okay, important stuff. So we're whizzing through a little here, whizzing through, but that's important. So talking of whizzing, here's the next thing: turning your mission into action. Now, this is a little bit brief, really, because it really depends on what your mission is. But your mission can be, you're going to start a heart-centered business, a non-profit organization. It might be changing something in the job that you're currently in. It might be doing something for your community. It can be in any number of stuff. It doesn't all mean that we all have to become, life coaches, Hay House authors, speakers. We don't all have to do it that way. And in actual fact, that it's finding the talents that you have and matching those talents up against your driving forces. So if your driving forces is to change the world in a particular way, so Sylvia, just kind of caught what you were sort of like saying there, about humans and animals and all of that stuff. That might be that you just spend a lot of time writing petitions. It might be that you spend a lot of time. It might be that you suddenly decide, right, I'm going to get into a flight and I'm going to save 5 dogs in this country, or I'm going to go and, you know, whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be that this is what I do all of the time. It could be, I devote myself to doing this one thing every year. I devote myself to doing, 5 things. I devote myself, but it's doing the thing that makes you feel alive and feel most impassioned and feel that you're like, yes, this is why I do what I do. This is powerful for me. And I really, really care about it. And that's the important thing. So the only true happiness really comes where we're in service of other people and when we're engaging with other people. The way to step into that is to see everybody's actions and reactions as somehow a call for love. And when we understand it as a call for love, it means that we can engage that call for love with our heart, and we go heart to heart instead of ego to ego, which just actually amplifies problems instead of really resolving them. So that's an important thing to kind of look at. So I talk a lot and very fast. And this is all being recorded. So if there's anything that you feel that you've missed, you can absolutely go back over the recording of everything and kind of like have another listen to it. So that would be a good thing to do. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about something that I've decided to launch and I've got coming up. So I'm going to tell you about this, and then we're going to kind of like open to questions. So this is a new course that I have created, which is called The One Big Calling. Know your mission and do it. So if you want an awesome idea to change the world, but you haven't got a clear direction, some of the questions that I've asked today are part of the course. And it's really about asking some very powerful questions about who you are and what is it that you want. Because until you're clear on you, then you don't know how it is that you want to serve the world, but also as well, you don't know how you want to engage with the world that is going to benefit your own greatness, your own strength, your own empowerment, but above all, your own self-love and your own connection with your own heart. It's my dog licking out of her bowl, by the way. She's got a great way at picking her moments. So with all of this, it's just really getting an authentic need to make something amazing in the world and not letting yourself get in the way of you not doing it. So the course is split up again into 3 parts: getting to know yourself, real big tools to get over your resistance, which is going to be useful and applicable to every area of your life. And then the last bit is how on earth do you turn that into a business? And with that, there's also a free ebook that I've put with it for those of us who want to set up a private practice, very similar to my own career, because I see clients who are stuck. I believe stuck is a halting point while you're waiting for more information. And all of the courses and all of the books that I write and things that I create are all around the idea of becoming unstuck with inspired ideas to basically live your life from your heart, inspired, doing the things that you really, really want to be doing. So let me ask you guys something. What are the things that really cause the most resistance to you? What are the things that scare you? When you think about doing your one big calling, when you think about finding your mission, what is the stuff that gets in the way of that? What are the things where you just go, I can't? Where does the I can't come from? Is it money? Is it I can't afford to do this? Is it kind of I don't have time to do it? Is it I don't know what my family's going to think of this? What are the things that kind of get in the way? I think that those things kind of like come up. So Helen has asked me a question. I'm having a problem deciding what my passion is, and I have so many of them, I don't know which one to focus on. Okay, Helen, brilliant question. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so if you imagine that, if you put it in terms of kind of like having an umbrella over your life with 100 different things underneath the umbrella. So on the course, I talk about an interdisciplinary mind. And Helen, it sounds like you have one of those. So there's actually a blog that I've written on my website, beckywalsh.com, and have a look at that. It's called Jack of All Trades and the Master of None. And what that basically is that we can have so many ideas that we come up with paralysis because we just don't know which one to choose. But in actual fact, and I'm very similar to you on this one, Helen, I love doing so many different things. So I have an umbrella, and my umbrella comes from what I don't like about other human beings. And one of the things I don't like about other human beings, quite frankly, is the insanity of being human. I don't like it in myself. I just the rotational thinking, the insecurities, the crazy stuff that kind of comes up. Now, for some people, it creates wars, it creates people to fight each other. So to me, my job is to move people from fear and closer towards love, closer towards their heart-centered decisions. So that's the umbrella. I move people from fear closer towards love. That is the title for my umbrella. How I do it is I'm a radio show presenter, so it leaks out into my presenting of radio. I write books. And I've even written an erotic fiction book because I decided, well, how can I teach people how to find self-love and reach an audience that would never pick up a self-help book in a million years? Oh, but they might pick up a little dirty one. So I decided to write a book under the name of Rebecca Stone so that I cleared my brand in 2 different ways. That still comes underneath that umbrella, even though it's slightly rude. Public speaker, doing these webinars, doing online courses, helping people one-to-one, all of these different things that I do all come under that one title of moving people from fear to love. So what I would say to you, Helen, is what is it? What is your umbrella? What would be the title of your umbrella? And the way to help you find that title of the umbrella is, what don't you like in humans? And if that was a call for love, what would it be? And how does that already show up in your life? Good little reflection there. Thank you for your question. That's really cool. Okay. Claire, I have a real problem explaining what I do to people without the assumption that they think I'm mad or a bit too fluffy. How do I get over this? We know that one. The work is so useful. People need to know about it. Or maybe they don't. Yes, they do, Claire. Yes, they do. So the thing about explaining things to people, they always say if you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it enough. And so what's happening, Claire, is you're listening to too many different voices in your head. So you're projecting what's going on with all of the different people that could be your clients or customers. So break it right down to who do you want to work with. So when you're really clear on who you want to work with. So Claire, I've just seen that you've just said to Roberta that you do EFT matrix reimprinting, which of course something I do too. So when you're talking about like energy healing work, and we're talking about EFT and matrix reimprinting. Really, EFT and matrix reimprinting is a fast way of dissolve people's limited beliefs that they perceive is lacking inside of themselves. So it's some kind of like limiting belief. If you get really clear on what and who your client is, then you start actually addressing their problem. So for example, if the thing that you don't like in the world is people's greed, I think we talked about that a little moment ago. You don't like people's greed. People's greed comes from people believing that they can't get enough and that nobody sees them and that, the world is full of people who steal from them. Then that's what's the call for love. The call for love is that your clients, if it was greedy being your thing, that your clients believe, I'm not enough. So if your clients believe that I'm not enough, then your sales pitch would be, do you always feel like you get overlooked? Do you feel like nobody sees you and you are, missed in the the ether of busy people? Do you keep applying for promotions and it never happens to you? I have something I can do for you. Because actually nobody's really interested in your techniques, tools, courses. Nobody ever says to me, Becky Walsh, what are your exam results and qualifications for the work that you do? I've never been asked. But people ask me, what can you do for me? How can you help me? So ultimately, people are very, need-based. So a person will want to know, what is it that you can do for me? And if you can answer what it is that you do for them, then you're really getting somewhere. So rather than saying, I do EFT matrix reimprinting, which quite frankly, what the heck is that? Nobody knows what that is. Don't even use it as a title. Just say, I have a technique that helps people move through XYZ and keep it really, really narrow. Because when we don't have clients, we think we need to be serving everybody all of the time. But if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody, and that just won't help you. So I hope that really helps you. So that's a good thing. Right, I'm going to just pick through these as easily as I can. Janice, how do I find self-forgiveness and self-love? Such a foreign concept to me. And thank you very much, Ego. I've read that like you were joking, Janice. I'm hoping that you were. Finding self-love and self-forgiveness, that's a really huge one. I think it's, and this is how it works for me. So I can only really speak about how it works for me. But I think my inner critic, who is the nastiest, says some bloody horrible things. I have compassion, and I can see the positive of my inner critic. My inner critic means that I try and get things right. My inner critic helps me do things. So when it comes to self-forgiveness and self-love, understand that you're just doing the best that you can, and you always have been. You're just doing the best that you can. And when you know that you're just doing the best that you can and you're just learning, really self-love is about personal compassion. It's about personal compassion. It's understanding that we're all just doing the best that we can, but we have this part of ourselves that is scared, is absolutely scared. The chimp brain is terrified of everything. And so it makes us act out, and it makes us tell ourselves stories, and it makes us believe that these stories are true, and the stories aren't true. And when you get engaged with your heart self or the awareness, and you step back, you have so much more clarity. You can see people so much more clearly. And then you can see yourself with compassion. So that's the main thing, is love the things about yourself that you hate and stop trying to change them. Just try and accept them, because by accepting them, they get quieter. They're not as loud. When you actually accept who you are, they're absolutely not as loud. Hope that helps. Debs, just read, you came in 30 minutes late. That's okay, we won't tell you off. Yes, the webinar is going to be sent to you directly. A link to where you can find it on YouTube will be sent to you directly at the end of the webinar, so you can find it. So don't worry about that. It will be there for you, so you can catch up on all the important little bits that you missed. But thank you for joining us late anyway. It's really, really great to have you. Thank you. Okay, now I'm just going back over. This is like instrumental music. Okay, so Claire, you've just kind of come back to me about that, so that's good. So your umbrella is to help people clear debris from their lives. Oh, I love that. Debris from their lives, allowing themselves to be who they truly are and rediscovering their shine. Okay, take the fluff right out of that. So that's quite fluffy, no offense, it's quite fluffy. So I just think what's perfect about that. Now, what is debris in people's lives? So it might just be something really simple. I help people get clear of their past and move forward into a bright new future. Yeah, just really like one sentence, on the homepage, smack up on your website, there it is. Hopefully that helps. But the more you go into stuff with kind of like any kind of airy-fairy language, the more it turns people off. It's like, what's the problem? What's the result? So whenever you're writing copy, it's like, talk to the problem, speak to the result. And that's the most important thing. So you've got that juxtaposition of problem and solution. Okay. Sylvia, don't know which tool or how to connect human with dogs, spirituality, intellectually, housekeeping and zootherapy. Have you been spying through my window? So in terms of all of that stuff, again, it's the umbrella. Like, what is the real message? What is the heart-centered desire between all of that? I mean, housekeeping is kind of like, it's pretty much about nurturing the spirituality side of that. Well, if you can keep yourself spiritual in the zoo that is life, that's really quite crazy. And even if you can keep calm when you've got a raging hangover and a barking dog, not that happens a lot to me, but all of these things, it's like you have a very long life. I know when people say, oh, life is short, but life is short when you're not present. Life, it's like when people sort of say, oh, I can't even think what I was doing last week. Or when people say, where did August go? I can't believe we're in September. When you're present in every moment, and this isn't kind of like a lesson in mindfulness, but when you're present, life is actually really quite long. It's not as short as we believe it to be. But when we're not present, time flies by. So in knowing that, it might be for the next 6 months you want to work with dogs, for the next 6 months you want to concentrate on your spirituality, for 6 months after that, you know, you clean the house because it's got filthy, it's been a year. So, so, so whatever it is, sometimes we get bogged down with the idea that we've got to do everything at once. We are living our life like we're in permanent fear of midlife crisis, you know. So, 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 so just breathe a little and be mindful that you can be doing something to the best of your ability for a certain length of time. But in actual fact, the most interesting people I know have had several careers in one lifetime, and they've never stuck to one thing. And they've just continued doing really, really amazing stuff. And that stuff's really, really important. So yeah, you really want to know about that. Okay. Yep. There is going to be a recording straight after. Thanks for answering that, Kat. Okay, so you said if you keep trying to fix yourself and put off helping others, but what about be the change you want to see in the world? Yeah, that would be, to me, I would be therefore being the change that I wanted to see in the world. Because by trying to fix yourself, and what I'm talking about by fixing yourself, I don't mean, you know, to be the change you see in the world would be, you know, I do my recycling, you know, I pet small animals, I do wonderful things in the world. But to be the change I want to see in the world, the change I want to see in the world is not a bunch load of narcissistic people trying to fix themselves. That's not the change I personally want to see in the world. What I want to see in the world is a bunch load of awake people trying to accept themselves and step into the world bravely and buoyantly. You know, so you know, and Christina, I hope I haven't got your name wrong there in the pronunciation. I'm absolutely not accusing you of that, but there sometimes is a spiritual narcissism, and I'm not saying that this is you at all, where we actually spend a lot of time kind of like really enjoying trying to change who we are, when in actual fact accepting who we are. So obviously there are things about myself that I wouldn't be able to accept. Like I wouldn't be able to accept if I was somebody who had so much fear, I was cruel to others. But if I was to actually accept that I've got an awful lot of fear and have compassion around that, could I then be cruel to others? No. So when we're trying to actually fix ourselves and we get buried in the problems of our own psychology and what is wrong with us, actually understanding that, yes, there is a certain amount that you absolutely can do about that and you can enjoy doing it, but don't get stuck on it, because you will spend a lifetime with the ego trying to find something outside of itself to make it like itself. So in other words, it would kind of like the ego will always come up with something that's wrong with you. And the ego will say, you have to do this, this, and this, and this before you can do the heart-centered calling. And then suddenly you're on your deathbed going, oh my goodness, I never actually did it. Because there will always be something about yourself that you don't like. It's part of the human condition. You know, and as we move forward in life, I mean, what do? We get to a point when then suddenly it's like, oh, I don't like myself, I'm aging. It's like, oh my goodness. Oh, I'm now too old to do that. And then you're like, well, I'm not going to suddenly regress myself into becoming younger. It's about being like compassionate to where you are right now. So I hope that that makes sense. And you can argue with me if you like, or say, no, that didn't make sense. I think you're being very cruel. And I do apologize if it sounds a bit rough, but it's true. It's like, you know, I've witnessed it myself and I've done it myself, that I spent a lot of time thinking, you know, I don't like this about me. But then when I found something that I've cared about more than I've cared about my own fear about whether or not I'm going to look like an absolute idiot, I've done it. So if I spent a lot of time thinking, I can't do this because I'm not good enough and I'm not ready enough, I will never become good enough and ready enough to do it. Sometimes it's actually by throwing yourself into something wholeheartedly, do we actually get to do that? And again, I'm talking about throwing yourself into a passion. I'm not talking about quitting your job and jumping off a cliff and going and doing something because you think the universe is going to catch you. Be your own self-universe. Hope that makes sense. Good stuff. Yeah, thanks for the fact that I make myself laugh. Yes, I do make myself laugh. Somebody's kind of got to. Good. Okay, so good. This is lovely. A lot of you are sort of talking to each other, which is great. Christina, I see trying to fix yourself as negative, but yeah, being aware of your shadow. Yes, you're right. Being aware of your shadow and your limits and undergoing the process of integrating and healing them. Do you know, the more you actually aim towards the light, the bigger your shadow becomes, interestingly. Because the more you aim towards the light, you know, when I'm talking about the light, what I'm talking about is the more you aim towards being amazing in the world, the bigger your shadow actually gets. And the reason that your shadow gets is because the more the ego says, you don't want to do that, you don't want to kill me, I'm not suicidal, don't want to go over there. Oh no, you need to spend time dealing with your shadow. Look how big it's got. But if you turn around and go, yeah, I've got a shadow. Yeah, I've got limits. I'm in a physical body. I'm human. And your point is, I will continue with my two selves, my shadow ego, my limiting perceptions, my limiting beliefs, and I will continue with my heart that is just going, wow. I know we just lost Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's pretty sad and quite tragic, actually. But I tell you something, that man died at a darn good age and with his music outside of him. And his biggest saying was, do not die with music inside of you. You step into the world and start singing your music and being the person that comes from your heart, your shadow doesn't stand a freaking chance. Your shadow doesn't stand a chance. But the more you try and fix your shadow, the more you're saying there's something wrong with me. And the more you say there's something wrong with me, the more you're embedding into the thing that's wrong with you. But the more you say, I am here to shine, I am here to serve, I'm here to do something amazing. I am aware of my shadow. I'm aware I get triggered. I am aware that I can have 10 people in a room and 9 people say I'm brilliant and 1 person says I'm an idiot, and I'm going to analyze why that person doesn't like me. Ha ha ha, that's so freaking human. I'm such a numpty. Brilliant. And then you come out of it. But if you double negative, which is, oh my God, my God, my God, there's something really wrong with me because I'm judging myself for the fact that there's something wrong with me. And now I'm judging the fact that I'm judging the fact that there's something wrong with me. And then that's triple the amount of judging. In actual fact, sometimes it's just to laugh and go, wow, that's so human. I have so much compassion. You know, you just lost it over a piece of crap. You're so human. I have so much compassion. Now turn around and apologize and be a better human being next time. That's enough. That's enough. It really, honestly, if you can master that in a lifetime, you're doing incredibly well. You know, you can then go and live on the side of a mountain or something where nobody can bother you and you can meditate and be in a state of wonderfulness, if you like. Yeah. So, yeah, layer and conditioning and finding new layers. But it's really interesting that, you know, not to go on too much about this, but I understand what you're saying there about going through layer after layer of conditioning and layers of beliefs that other people have given to you, maybe your parents, maybe your teachers, you know. So one of the beliefs that I had was I was stupid and I would never amount to anything. And that was because I'm dyslexic. And when I was at school, they didn't have dyslexia. And so it was kind of, well, they didn't have it, you know, it wasn't in the bottle or anything, but they didn't believe in dyslexia. And so I really I didn't even bother with my exams because I knew I wouldn't pass them because, let's face it, nobody passes an exam if you're stupid. But of course, my desire to create cognitive ecstasy with other human beings, having read a self-help book that was recommended to me by a boyfriend, and that basically sums up what he thought of me within the relationship. Here, sweetie, take this, you're screwed up. Reading that self-help book, having that moment of cognitive ecstasy, that light bulb that went off and went, oh my God, that's what I'm doing wrong. And the desire to write self-help books so that I could create cognitive ecstasy in other people's lives was so great. I got over the belief that I was stupid and I wrote 5 books. So if I hadn't had the desire, which outweighs, if I spent ages going, I need to improve my self-belief about being stupid, I need to get over my dyslexia, I need to, no, just need a damn good editor. And I had one, so that was good. Okay. So would my umbrella, sorry, Helen, I'm answering your question there. So would my umbrella mean to heal the hurt? I've lost you there. So it might be something that you've kind of said, people, hang on, I'm going back. People who, okay, so people that hurt others or animals. What's their cry for love, anyhow? Yeah, people who hurt others or animals. It's the belief in a lack of consciousness. So people who hurt animals. So let's talk about animals, for example. Do you know? Did you realise? And this is something that I learned from the wonderful Sharon King, that people used to believe that babies had no physical feelings when they were born, which is why they would do circumcisions without any form of pain relief at all, slapping babies' backside, shoving tubes down their throat. Yeah, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable talking about this because people believe that they didn't have any feelings. Now, crazy. How can you believe that? I mean, what's the baby crying for? Hello, stupid. Anyway, don't get me started. So there is still perceptions that people have that animals do not have rights, that they do not have feelings, that they are disconnected. There's a lot of belief around that kind of stuff. So I would say it's absolute stark ignorance. So if it's ignorance to educate would be to liberate and educate, would be to be the teacher, would be to put forward intelligence into the world. So if cruelty to animals is a call for love, it's a call for education, it's a call for awareness. So that would be the umbrella, perhaps. So have a little think about that and see how you feel about that one as being a thing. So that's good. And you're very welcome. And yes, you met me at the Supervision Day in Brighton. Thank you very much. And hopefully you're going to be coming. There's obviously in September we've got Bruce Lipton, Robert Holden, I think Dr. David Hamilton, Carl Gray, Carl Dawson, all doing this stage thing that I'm going to be comparing in a few weeks actually in Birmingham. So don't forget that that's coming up too. All of the details of all of this stuff is on my website. Right, I'm going to wind up now because I think that we've kind of covered quite a lot in the time that we've got together, and take a little look. I'm gonna let you have a look, but take a little look. If anything else, just go onto the course. You can do the first part of the course for free, but I'm going to give you the next 24 hours to be able to buy the course at half price. This is just for you guys. Buy the course at half price. If you're the first 10 people to sign up for the course, if you're one of the 10, then you're going to be getting an exclusive class as well. So that you're going to get a lot of my one-to-one time. It won't be written like this. You'll actually be able to speak to me, and I'll be looking directly at what's going on in your life and trying to get that fixed. Of course, if there's some things that have come up for you during this particular webinar, you can book a one-to-one session with me on my website, beckywalsh.com as well. I'm here to serve. Clearly, it's one of the things that I enjoy doing most in life, don't you know? Good stuff. So anything else that I need to tell you? I think that's it. This will be coming into your inboxes so that you can have a little watch of this again, or if you've had to go off and go and make yourself a cup of tea and you've missed any of it. Just to say thank you so much for joining me. It always feels like you kind of like talking to yourself in a room. It always feels a little bit weird doing webinars. I'm still getting used to them. This is my first webinar that I've done on Google Hangouts, and I've quite enjoyed it. So I hope that you've enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully you'll be coming to see me soon. Ali, no, the course isn't a fixed time. You can do it in your own time. So if you sign up now, you can actually do it in your own time. So if you haven't got time to do it quite now, that's okay. You can do it in your own time too. Okay, absolutely lovely to speak to you. Thank you ever so much for being part of the course, and I hope to catch you again soon. Thank you so much.
Hi. I've just completed Becky Walsh's brand new course, The One Big Calling, Know Your Mission and Do It. And I can't tell you just how fantastic this course is. Before the course I was really frustrated and really confused as to what direction I should go. But the course really brought everything together for me really easily and painlessly. There's many exercises in the course that'll just help really bring the pieces of the puzzle together, and I can tell you you'll have many light bulb moments like I have. you'll really get a sense of all the pieces of the puzzle coming together for you. Look, the course is so fun and it's incredibly easy to use. I'm not a whiz kid on the computer by any means, but it was just easy to log on. Look, I couldn't put it down. It was just so easy, and it was so interesting and fun to do. So also I really liked the feedback that Becky provides in the comments section. It just helps you know that you're on the right track with the course. So honestly, go sign up. You will get so much out of it, like I have, and most of all, you will know your mission, and like me, you'll be doing it too. Have fun.